The f is happening? Something is off. Is that the wire stopped going? No, is it?
It's not.
No, it's still going. Shut it off, shut it off.
Tony's dreams of striking it rich crumbled faster than the shaky foundations of his wash plant when inspectors swooped in, shutting down his entire operation at Indian River. What should have been a season of triumph quickly spiraled into chaos as Tony, the so-called king of the Klondike, faced an unrelenting storm of setbacks that jeopardized his crew, his profits, and his crown. Tune in as a shocking twist threatens to end his season and maybe his reign for good. The high price of Klondike glory. The first major roadblock wasn't just a small bump, it was a disaster that put the entire season on the brink. Inspectors arrived unannounced and shut down his operation at Indian River. The problem? His water license wasn't in order. What should have been a straightforward gold mining operation turned into a legal and logistical nightmare. Plans to mine 15 acres were thrown out the window when the license allowed for only one. The consequences rippled through the crew, leaving morale in shambles and the season hanging by a thread. But buried in the paperwork was a clue to something far worse. One discovery that could end their operation for good. Meanwhile, Parker was in a league of his own, pulling gold out of the ground faster than anyone could believe. His operation was smooth, efficient, and meticulously planned. It was everything Tony's wasn't, and the results spoke volumes. As Parker counted his profits, the contrast with his competitor's mountain of problems grew starker. Indian River was a mess before the inspectors even showed up. The claim had been flooded, and weeks were spent pumping out water and preparing the ground. His biggest piece of equipment, the wash plant, had been sitting idle for years and needed a complete overhaul to get back into working condition. This wasn't just flipping a switch, it was an engineering and logistical headache. Every component from the massive shaker deck to the spray bars had to be painstakingly reassembled. It was a high-stakes game of puzzle solving, and every delay was another nail in the coffin of the season. The crew worked tirelessly under his watchful eye, hauling and lifting heavy machinery into place. Tensions ran high as his temper flared at the smallest misstep. Progress was slow, but eventually the wash plant roared to life. Just as they thought they were finally getting ahead, another problem surfaced. A flaw in the setup threatened to derail everything again. It was a relentless series of challenges, each one testing the limits of the crew's endurance. When the inspectors arrived, it was like the final blow in an already punishing season. Their review of the operation was thorough, and their verdict was clear. Without the proper water license, mining couldn't continue. The Indian River site, which had seen so much effort, was now at a standstill. The ripple effect was immediate. The crew, who had worked around the clock to get things ready, now faced an uncertain future. For them, this wasn't just a job, it was their livelihood. The shutdown left them grappling with the reality that the season might already be lost. With Indian River off the table, the only option was to return to Paradise Hill. This site had been left idle for weeks, and getting it back up and running would be no easy task. The equipment needed maintenance, the roads were in rough shape, and time was running out. It was a race against the clock, with every setback eating into their dwindling chances of success. While he scrambled to salvage the season, Parker was hitting milestone after milestone. His operation ran like a well-oiled machine, producing gold at an astonishing rate. The difference between the two miners couldn't have been more striking. Parker's methodical approach and meticulous planning paid off in spades, while the chaotic and reactive style of his competitor seemed to create more problems than it solved. The contrast was a harsh reminder of what was possible with the right strategy and execution. At Paradise Hill, the crew faced one challenge after another. Reviving the operation required more than just effort. It demanded creativity, resourcefulness, and a whole lot of patience. One of the biggest obstacles was water management. Without a steady and properly managed water supply, the mining process would grind to a halt. The crew scrambled to set up temporary fixes while waiting for delayed shipments of essential parts. Every delay felt like an eternity, and the pressure to deliver grew with each passing day. As the season wore on, the stakes only got higher. His reputation as the king of the Klondike was on the line, and every ounce of gold became a symbol of hope. The crew pushed themselves to the limit, fueled by a determination to turn things around. Despite the challenges, there were small victories. Every bit of progress, no matter how minor, was a step towards salvaging the season. Parker's success loomed large over these struggles. The young miner's operation was a shining example of what careful planning and execution could achieve. While one team fought to keep its operation afloat, Parker's team seemed to glide effortlessly toward success. It was a stark contrast that underscored the harsh realities of gold mining. For the struggling crew, Parker's rise was a constant reminder of what they were up against. The final weeks of the season were a blur of activity at Paradise Hill. The crew worked around the clock, repairing equipment, clearing roads, and doing everything they could to maximize production. It was a grueling effort, but giving up was never an option. Determination to succeed drove the team forward, even as exhaustion and frustration threatened to take over. By the time the season drew to a close, the operation was a shadow of what had been envisioned. The setbacks at Indian River, the constant challenges at Paradise Hill, and the unrelenting pressure had taken their toll. Despite their best efforts, the results fell far short of the original goal. But through it all, the crew had persevered. They had faced every obstacle head-on, refusing to back down even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Tony had seen better days. The gold mining game he had mastered for years was slipping through his fingers, and this season wasn't doing him any favors. The Klondike was unforgiving, icy winters, short summers, and a clock that ticked relentlessly. He had built a reputation on taking risks and wasn't about to back down now. This year he'd bet big on Indian River, a new claim he hoped would yield mountains of gold. Spoiler, it didn't. When one plan falls apart, another challenge takes its place, ready to test them all over again. Modern machines, old challenges. The plan seemed solid at first. Move the entire operation, get the massive wash plant running, and rake in the gold. But the challenges hit hard and fast. The ground was flooded, delaying everything, and the wash plant, a rusty beast from another era, turned into a nightmare to rebuild. Days turned into weeks, money drained faster than water through a sluice, and the crew's frustration grew with each passing moment. To make matters worse, a water license hiccup slashed their operation from 15 acres to just one measly acre. Imagine being promised an all-you-can-eat buffet, but only getting a single cracker. That's what he was up against. The inspectors shut him down, leaving him stuck in a sea of paperwork and red tape. Months of planning and endless effort were wiped out in an instant, and his frustration boiled over. But anger doesn't fix legal issues, and the Indian River claim was officially a bust. Meanwhile, over at Parker's operation, it was a completely different story. Parker, the young hotshot, ran his mining crew like a well-oiled machine. His gear was state-of-the-art, his plans were solid, and his team knew exactly what they were doing. While setbacks plagued Indian River, Parker was pulling in gold like it was falling from the sky. Cleanup after cleanup, the gold kept piling up. His operation wasn't just running smoothly, it was thriving. The difference between the two miners was stark. The old-school style, big risks, big gambles, looked outdated in comparison to Parker's modern, data-driven approach. Parker wasn't just digging for gold, he was strategizing, planning, and innovating. His investments in advanced tech and training paid off big time, making his operation efficient and wildly successful. Back at the struggling camp, things weren't getting any better. With Indian River shut down, the focus shifted to Paradise Hill, the backup claim. But even there, challenges piled up. Equipment left idle for weeks, needed repairs, and water management turned into a constant headache. Every delay felt like another nail in the season's coffin. The crew's morale plummeted and tempers flared. Leadership style, intense, demanding, and often abrasive, added to the tension. Some crew members thrived under the pressure, but others struggled to keep up. Despite the setbacks, the team pushed forward with sheer determination. They managed to scrape some gold together at Paradise Hill, but it was nowhere near the 6,000 ounces hoped for. The season ended with a bitter sense of disappointment. The king of the Klondike had taken a serious hit, both in profits and pride. Parker, on the other hand, wrapped up his season with record-breaking numbers. His crew worked seamlessly, each task flowing into the next like clockwork. Parker's investments in cutting-edge tech paid off, with mobile wash plants and advanced monitoring systems maximizing efficiency. While the struggling team patched up problems, Parker's crew kept hitting gold-rich ground, turning every cleanup into a jaw-dropping success. As winter crept back in and the machines fell silent, the miners had time to reflect. For some, this season was a harsh wake-up call. The Klondike wasn't the same place it had been for years. The game was changing, and to stay in it, adaptation was key. Parker's success was a glaring reminder of what the future of mining looked like: strategy, precision, and adaptability. Old-school methods weren't enough to compete with Parker's forward-thinking approach. The young miner had proven that gold mining was no longer just about brute force, it was about smart planning and staying ahead of the curve. The Klondike's unforgiving landscape demanded more than grit. It required innovation and efficiency. And Parker had it in spades. Looking ahead, the path was clear: evolve or get left behind. The lessons from this season, careful planning, attention to detail, and a willingness to embrace change, were essential for success. Whether recovery was possible remained to be seen, but one thing was certain: the Klondike didn't wait for anyone. For Parker, the season was a triumph. He'd set a new standard for gold mining in the Klondike, proving that the future belonged to those who embraced it. As the snow covered the ground once again, Parker could look ahead with confidence, knowing that he was shaping the future of the industry. The others, on the other hand, were left to pick up the pieces and figure out how to reclaim their place in the ever-changing world of gold mining. The struggles at Indian River highlighted just how critical proper preparation had become. The operation faced constant breakdowns, from malfunctioning belts to engine failures. The wash plant's outdated design made even small repairs a drawn-out ordeal, and the lack of spare parts on site meant delays stretched even further. Meanwhile, the crew's exhaustion was impossible to ignore. Long hours, cold nights, and constant pressure pushed them to their limits. Still, they pushed forward, determined to salvage what they could. Over at Paradise Hill, the problems weren't much better. The site itself posed challenges, with uneven terrain and tricky water flow patterns complicating every step of the process. The crew's ingenuity kept things running, barely. Makeshift solutions were the order of the day, but the Band-Aid fixes couldn't cover up the deeper issues. Every minute felt like a race against time, with winter's icy grip closing in fast. On the other side of the Klondike, another operation showcased just how far the industry had come. The use of advanced technology gave it a distinct edge. Soil analysis tools pinpointed the richest areas to mine, while drones provided real-time updates on site conditions. These innovations didn't just save time, they maximized results. The team embraced these tools, using them to refine their strategies and maintain an impressive level of efficiency. Leadership played a significant role in its success. A calm, focused demeanor set the tone for the entire operation. Crew members felt valued and supported, which translated into a sense of pride in their work. Training sessions ensured everyone was on the same page, and clear communication kept misunderstandings to a minimum. The ability to balance ambition with practicality was a key factor in achieving a record-breaking season. As the season came to a close, the contrast between outcomes couldn't have been more striking. Setbacks served as a sobering reminder of how quickly things could go wrong in the Klondike. On the other hand, success demonstrated the power of adaptability and forward thinking. The lessons from this season would shape the future of gold mining in the region, setting a new standard for what it took to thrive in one of the world's most challenging environments. As one season ends, the fight to survive and succeed is just getting started. A tale of two mines. The Klondike goldfields were all about grit, guts, and big gambles. Winter hit, snow blanketed the ground, and suddenly everything ground to a halt. For some miners, this was the time when the noise of machines gave way to the noise inside their heads. Questions, doubts, and plans for what was coming next. For others, winter wasn't just about hunkering down, it was about setting up for the next big score. The season ended in a mess for one operation. Inspectors came down hard, shaking their heads at old rigs and outdated methods. They handed over a list longer than a grocery receipt of everything that needed fixing. Every item on that list screamed "money pit," and the operator knew it. The site had bled its budget dry. Piles of gold, probably worth hundreds of thousands, had been dumped into keeping the operation afloat, but now it was in the red. Debts weren't just looming, they were growling. Meanwhile, another miner was living on the flip side of the coin. Where one saw bills and breakdowns, another saw gold. Big gold. The season had ended with mountains of shiny stuff, enough to make anyone's jaw drop. But there was no sitting back and enjoying the view. Plans were already in motion. Consultants were called in, their expertise dissecting the season to identify what worked and what didn't. Every insight was absorbed and acted upon. The off-season was a frenzy of activity. New technology was acquired, rigs and machines upgraded to make them faster, bigger, and better. It wasn't just about fixing stuff, it was about building an empire. New patches of land were hunted down, ones with dirt practically glittering with promise. Each deal was another chess move, setting up for a win. For others, winter meant heavy meetings with the crew. Talks about cutting costs and tightening belts filled the air. Loyalty was on shaky ground. Keeping the team together wasn't just about good vibes, it was about survival. Every member had to believe that next season wouldn't be a repeat of this mess. The tone wasn't the usual gruffness. It was softer, almost desperate, a rare sight in the harsh realities of mining life. As one miner patched up morale, another patched up the future. Focus wasn't just on surviving another season, it was on being unstoppable. Downtime was turned into go time, ensuring readiness for the challenges ahead. When spring rolled back around, the stage was set. One miner faced the uphill battle of a lifetime, trying to dig out of a hole both literally and financially. Inspectors would be back and leniency wasn't expected. Equipment barely held together, the budget was tighter than a drum, and crew faith was shaky at best. Every decision had to count, or it could mean the end of the line. The other was ready to hit the ground running. Shiny new equipment stood primed and ready, claims were locked down, and the team was raring to go. This wasn't just about making gold, it was about dominating the competition. The Klondike remained a land of dreams and disasters. On one side, a veteran fought to stay relevant, battling the weight of old-school methods and modern-day expectations. On the other, a rising star used every tool available to rewrite what success looked like. This wasn't just a season of mining, it was a showdown. And in the Klondike, only one thing mattered: who came out on top when the snow melted and the gold started flowing again. He tried to negotiate with suppliers, wheeling and dealing for parts at a discount, but they weren't biting. Most of them had already written him off as a lost cause. Tony's debts weren't just owed to banks, he owed favors and promises to people who had helped him out when times were tough. And now they were all calling those favors in, leaving Tony scrambling to keep his head above water. Parker's winter looked like a completely different world. While Tony spent his days worrying, Parker was busy planning his empire's expansion. He didn't just upgrade his rigs, he revolutionized them. The new machines were faster, sleeker, and capable of processing more dirt in less time. Parker's strategy was all about efficiency. He didn't want to just mine gold, he wanted to mine it better, smarter, and faster than anyone else. His consultants played a key role in this. They didn't just crunch numbers, they brought ideas to the table that Parker hadn't even considered. One consultant suggested a new method of layering the dirt for processing, which could increase yield by 20%. Another pointed out how minor adjustments in his water usage could save thousands of gallons while keeping operations running smoothly. Every tweak, every adjustment was aimed at perfection. Parker also spent a good chunk of his off-season scouting for new claims. He didn't want to put all his eggs in one basket. His goal was diversification. If one site didn't produce as expected, another could pick up the slack. He traveled miles across the Klondike, analyzing soil samples and studying the land's history. Parker knew that striking a deal on the right claim could mean the difference between a good season and a record-breaking one. Will Tony's uncertainty or Parker's confidence lead to greater success in the end? Whose leadership style would you follow? Leave your thoughts in the comments, like and subscribe.